So these are my notes over TESS and the 4 domains with Charlotte Danielson. And TESS is Teacher Excellence Support System, and it was developed as an evaluation tool and support system for teachers, and was developed around the Danielson domains. And pretty much what TESS is it's something that teachers will go in and reflect on other teachers, and they'll tell them they'll write down skills that they could use, and they'll also take notes over what the teachers have done, and then they can take those notes and apply them to their next lessons and stuff that they do in the future. Domain 1 is planning and preparation, and that is knowledge of content and pedagogy, and you need to know your content knowledge so that you're able to convey it to your students. And then knowledge of your students, which is their learning process, and also students with special needs. So you're able to make changes to lessons for those types of students that need that. And then also their interest in cultural heritage, because a lot of times if you have a diverse classroom, which you always will, students don't want to hear about one race the entire time. And then instructional outcomes, which are the clarity and balance of your lessons, and your lessons have to have clarity within them, and they have to be balanced or students aren't going to understand and you're going to lose them. And then knowledge of your resources, which is like for your classrooms and for your students, and I like to think of it as if you have a computer in your classroom and your students are looking up photosynthesis or learning about photosynthesis and they're not all grasping it, a tool that you could use is the computer, and they could look around at what photosynthesis was, and that would be one of your resources. And then coherent instruction, and then student assessment, which is the criteria and standard and is used for planning. Domain 2 is the classroom environment, and it's creating an environment of respect, and that's teacher interaction with students and also students' interaction with other students. And there has to be respect in your classroom between teachers and students and students and students, or you're going to have a terrible year and you're absolutely going to hate it. And then also culture for learning is part of that domain, and it's the importance of the content, and then also the expectations for learning and achievement, and you can place those in your class so that your students can see those all the time. And then classroom procedures, those need to be posted in your class, and you need to go over them continuously with your students so that they don't forget what they are. And then student behaviors, you need to manage their student behaviors with expectations and the response to the behaviors that you give, because a lot of times students will be bad on purpose just to see the response that they can get from you. And then physical space, a lot of times teachers will set classrooms up really weird, or they're all in one line, so students aren't able to communicate with each other if they need to, or they're not able to actually have a conversation about the lesson if they need to. So I think that a classroom, the physical space in your classroom, there should be enough. Everybody should have their own bubble, but there shouldn't be more than a bubble so that they're able to learn together. And then domain 3 is instruction, which is communicating with your students, and that would be you going over your expectations for learning, doing a directions and procedures activity so maybe they'll understand it better, and then your expectations of the content, and then you do an explanation of the content so that your students are able to understand it better. And then the next is using questions and discussion techniques, and the quality of the discussions and the prompts that you give, and it's also the quality of discussion and prompts that your students give back to you. And then engaging students in their learning, which you could do activities and assessments, and grouping of students. How you group your students really says something about your class, because if you group students with a bunch of people that they don't like, they're not going to learn. And then assessment and instruction, and flexibility and responsiveness in your classroom. And you need to have flexibility in your class because it's a response to your students, or you need to have flexibility because you have to be flexible with your lessons. And then responsiveness, you have to be responsive to your students or they're not going to want to learn from you. And then the last domain is domain 4, which is professionalism, and you have to reflect on your teaching as a teacher, or you're not going to be able to change your teaching, and you're going to think that it's your way or the highway, and a lot of students don't learn that way. And then Also, communicating with families, that's a major thing because sometimes the families are your biggest allies, and you need to have those families on your side, or you're not going to be able to get across to that student, and you're going to have a terrible year. And then participating in the professional community, and that's like when Dr. Shahan talked to us about how she was going to a meeting with Dr. Longing to do a presentation, and I think that it's awesome that that teachers will go, and they'll continue to go to conferences just so that they can continue to understand what's going on, and they don't just sit and just fall back on new technology and new teaching tools that they could learn. And then growing and developing professionally, which is your, and it's enhancing your enhancement of content knowledge. And so that's you enhancing what you know about the content knowledge, and that's kind of talking about going to conferences. And then also demonstrating professionalism. You have to demonstrate professionalism, because if you don't, then your students aren't going to want to be around you, other teachers aren't going to want to be around you, and you're not going to be able to stay within a district or a school because they're not going to want you there because you don't act in a professional manner or way. So that's what I took from Tess and the 4 Danielson domains.